digitalization, exploration, and innovative development initiatives to Malta. We also need to rigorously explore the economic niche presented by esports, video gaming, and game development, and how these could be incorporated in our already strong ecosystem. Currently, we are looking at formulating a holistic strategy, which we have just launched yesterday, wherein Malta could serve as a hub for this industry. A strategy which will also identify the ideal incentives and skills required, as well as establishing a new niche within a tourism sector. Operators in this space are already looking into using the services provided by Malta in order to tap European markets. In our drive to facilitate such ventures, a memorandum of understanding was signed yesterday between ESL, the largest esports organization in the world, and the government of Malta through the Gaming Malta Foundation. The memorandum of understanding will serve as an intent for both parties to develop a multi-year program to help the development of local grassroots esports ecosystem, the organization of local and international events, as well as the sharing of expertise in this sector. This serves as a clear confirmation that our unstinting commitment and continuous nurturing of this fledgling industry is what makes Malta the natural choice for investors and for them to become the main contributors for Malta's economic growth. We have journeyed far, way beyond what was deemed possible. A journey in which we managed to put Malta at the forefront of this technological revolution. However, there is still a lot to be done. We are very aware of the stumbling blocks businesses and operators face when setting up shops in Malta. And from here, I extend my heartfelt appeal to banks to adapt and adopt the necessary process to accommodate this new emergent industry. That said, it is good to note that applications from banks which cater for these businesses are now being processed by the Malta Financial Services Authority. Finally, I would like to thank everyone involved in the organization of this highly significant summit, particularly Amman Police, for his continuous effort in promoting Malta as the ultimate choice for investors in this space. Thank you, and I wish you all an interesting and rewarding event.
Will IoT reinvent the 21st century business model? An industry expert and veteran looks at how IoT has evolved to include new strategies to potentially serve as a major driver of business transformation. Mark Tavernier, Bitfury.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Prime Minister, Minister, thank you for such an inspiring introduction. Emin and the team, again, thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful event. So I'm going to correct 3 things about my introduction. And, I think this is a measure of the challenge you have when you look to AI and data operating on its own. The first is I'm not specifically going to talk about the Internet of Things. The second is that I'm not really an industry veteran. I'll let you into a little secret. It's the first secret. I'm only 18 years old. It's just because of the time I've worked in blockchain that I look like I do. So good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Tavernier. I'm with a company called the Bitfury Group. We're the world's largest blockchain company. We've been established since 2011. And what I want to talk to you about today is the importance of compliance. So we've heard already this morning, amongst a wonderful plethora of announcements and advancements that Malta is making on the world stage, we've heard about the importance of compliance. We've heard about the importance of trust. We've heard about the importance of data. We've heard about the importance of traditional financial institutions supporting the ecosystem, which I would echo the words of Mr. Schembri and urge the banks to engage with the ecosystem and find out how we can work together. Today, what I want to talk to you about really is how blockchain and the Internet of Things and AI are going to cause massive changes, changes that we can't even imagine yet. So let's start by looking at blockchain and where we've got to so far. Just over the recent months, there have been a large number of announcements from big traditional financial institutions to do with how they are going to go about executing their strategies, not what they're thinking about in the future, but what they're launching around blockchain solutions, around the opportunity to exploit these new technologies. And the reason why they're doing that, let's look at some of the numbers. It's because the momentum is really building. So if we just look at exchanges, there are approximately 30 million individuals across all of the exchanges around the world who are already registered and have access to and are operating around the world of cryptocurrencies. Now that doesn't take into consideration those IoT businesses that are already operating with data, many of which are based around blockchain or are evolving to be based around blockchain to ensure the certainty of data and to make sure that the machines can make good decisions. That represents more than just a startup idea, more than just a buzzword. It represents true momentum. And thankfully, thanks to Malta, many of those exchanges are making use of the clear guidance, the regulatory environment, and the surety of operation to base themselves here in Malta. That's something that we as Bitfury look forward to continue working to support. That growth is driving more investment into the industry. So we've seen approximately $4 billion of investment come in from relatively traditional places to support new business plans, to support the growth of existing businesses, and to help them propel them through the different phases. And what that is doing is creating more interest. And just earlier we heard about how Malta is, just this morning I think, at a press conference, announcing new educational certificates that include aspects around blockchain, AI, and new technologies to upskill and to make sure that the population in Malta have the skills able to embrace this new industry. And all of that is resulting in the fact that we at Bitfury have seen a threefold increase in the amount of activity at a governmental level, whether that be putting education certificates from start to finish on the blockchain, whether it be putting land registry for a whole country in the Republic of Georgia on the blockchain, or whether it is looking at how the banking system can deploy AML and compliance solutions to support these new industries. The net is that governments are driving this new sector, and those governments around the world that are leading this sector, I think, will create the most benefit for their countries. But there is a problem, and the problem is this. This whole area is very new. And again, if we look at a few numbers, we see that just in the world of crypto assets, our estimates are that there have been some $2 billion lost for various reasons. Sometimes it's fraud, sometimes it's just carelessness, other times it can be those funds are lost because keys are lost, which mean that you can't access the funds. But the net is that represents a significant problem for the industry and one that needs to be addressed. Now, some of that loss is due to bad actors working in the system, and we see that the number of law enforcement activities or requests for information on a quarter-by-quarter basis, which is the chart in the top right, has increased significantly. And the costs for those organizations who don't comply themselves and assuming all of this risk. And this is just at the start point. Imagine what happens when we begin to connect IoT devices, AI services to this new network, with the amount of data that that will bring and the number of transactions. These challenges will increase multifold as we advance through the growth. So our belief is that unless there is a massive adoption of compliance and auditing at an entire ecosystem level, those challenges will struggle to be overcome and they could be inhibitors to growth. So we think some of the challenges that compliance and auditing need to solve are issues around those listed at the bottom. And what we've done today is we have created a special program to support the businesses in Malta, which is on our technology stack, that allows compliance, auditing, AML, and know your transaction to take place at an institutional and industry-wide level. We've built this solution on top of a blockchain for audit purposes so that the audit trail is there from the start and businesses and industries can prove that these processes have been run. And today we're issuing an open call uniquely for the businesses in Malta to support the Malta vision, whereby we will freely integrate businesses who apply to join our program, who are based in Malta, who want to be able to demonstrate compliance from the very start of their business. For free, we will integrate these businesses into our platform and help them provide a compliance solution so that they can be prepared for whatever future compliance needs they would like to be able to demonstrate to market. I was asked to spend only 10 minutes talking about IoT and the future and the vision from an industry veteran perspective. I'll hope you will excuse me for taking the opportunity to talk about what I think is the most important aspect in this industry right now, which is how compliance, auditing, transparency, and trust can be built to allow growth and to support the Malta blockchain vision. So with that, I'll sign off. You can find us. We'll be around at the event today. I hope you all have a super successful show. Please enjoy yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you here again soon. Thank you.
A world first, giving DAO its legal personality. After setting up a coherent regulatory framework for DLT in 2018, Malta is now working on a fourth bill that will give DAO its own legal personality. Watch this space. Steve Tendon, Oxford Blockchain Foundation. Amandine Doa, Ledger. Leonard Bonello, Ganado Advocates. Irina Heaver, Bolton Foundation. Moderated by Christina Shikluna, Ganado Advocates.
Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us on this panel. I just want to start off by giving the panelists just a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, their background and their experience within AI, and then we can kickstart our discussion on DAOs and legal personality. Steve, perhaps you'd like to start off?
Yes, thank you, Christina, and thank you, Iman and all his crew for inviting me to this amazing AIBC Summit. My name is Steve Tendon. I'm the Managing Director of Change Strategies, offering strategy advisory services to all sorts of industries. Right now, I am working intensely with the Republic of the Marshall Islands to establish the SOV, the SOV, sovereign cryptocurrency with legal tender status. But I believe my claim to fame here is that I am probably the root cause of why we are all here gathering. In 2016, I drafted for the Ministry of Economy, Investment and Businesses the very first national strategy for the blockchain on Malta. I actually wrote the words blockchain island. I think it was the day after my birthday, and they told me I was probably not sober. Then I was invited to join Honorable Silvius Cambry's national task force as a strategy lead, and was actively working with the task force and Dr. Max Ganado on drafting these 3 laws that we heard the Prime Minister mentioned earlier. The fourth law, the ITAS Act, is actually a stepping stone towards a grander vision, which will take the form of this fourth law, which is upcoming, and where the key element is actually the topic of this panel. I wrote a blog post, which eventually became an article in 2018, which outlined the very essence of why we actually need these autonomous entities to be recognized as legal persons, but we will go into that soon.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Amandine?
So hello, my name is Amandine Doat. I work at Ledger. Ledger is a company selling hardware wallets, the very famous Ledger Nano S and now X, that I hope everyone has. We're also selling enterprise solutions to custody the assets for institutions. I'm heading the legal department and regulatory affairs department, so I'm pretty interested in the discussion we're going to have today. And I thank you everyone for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Leonard.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leonard Bonello. I'm a lawyer at Ganado Advocates. My background is predominantly financial regulation, especially in the field of payments, but always had a keen interest in fintech and, of course, the blockchain and AI spaces and natural evolution into this. I've also had a bit of a small part to play within the discussions and consultation process of the Maltese legislative framework, and I'm looking forward to the next step in the development of the Maltese legislative framework.
Thank you. Thanks, Irina.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back in Malta. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you very much for coming and seeing a bunch of lawyers talking about exciting legal stuff. My name is Irina Heaver, and I work on bringing legacy businesses into the 21st century. My company operates old-fashioned businesses, gold mines, diamond mines. We are in financial services, and what we're doing now, we are bringing emerging technology to extract value for our shareholders where possible, to provide liquidity for our businesses, and of course to get as much benefit as possible from the emerging tech, what it has to offer. I'm here for purely selfish reasons. Dubai has announced, I'm based in Dubai, by the way. Dubai has announced that by 2020 we're going to be running our government on blockchain, but there is no dispute resolution process. There is no legal regime which will allow for the businesses to sort of fully get there. That's why we started bottom-up initiative. We lobbied the regulators, we lobbied the legal affairs department, and we finally have them on board, and we have their full support. We've established legal innovation initiative, and I'm on the board. And my pure selfish reasons are to pick up the best ideas from my amazing colleagues in Malta, who are so far ahead of the rest of the world, and implement them in Dubai. So thank you very much for having me here. My pen is ready to write things down.
Thanks, Irina, and thank you everyone for that introduction. So just to continue off with what Irina mentioned, Malta has been very much at the forefront in terms of developing a robust regulatory framework for the implementation of laws towards service providers who are working within this industry, and also towards issuers of certain tokens. What we're doing now is going beyond the regulation of service providers, going beyond the certification and regulation of technology arrangements, and looking towards granting, or the prospect of granting, legal personality to these so-called decentralized autonomous organizations. But I suppose what we need to first address is what exactly is a decentralized organization as opposed to the traditional centralized governance structure we know of and we work with, and why do we need to have this legal personality granted, if we do at all. So I'd like to kickstart off the discussion basically with what exactly is a DAO, smart contracts as a decentralized concept in itself, and why do we need to have legal personality granted, if at all. So Steve, I'm happy to have you kick off this discussion, and then we'll take it in turns to see the views of the other panelists.
Right, maybe we should start with some definitions, because you rightly point out and what is a DAO. It's not clearly evident unless you've been looking into this for a while, but it's not difficult to grasp. If we consider what the Bitcoin network has done, we are already seeing nascent entity which we can call decentralized and autonomous. Why? Because the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin protocol, and all the factors that make it work have, in practice, replaced the clearing and settlement houses that typically were in between the endpoints of the transaction. So the software has replaced a human organization. And mind you, it's functioning so well that up to date no one has complained. Why? Because the Bitcoin, at the end of the day, notwithstanding the complexity of the cryptographic issues, and because the blockchain is this thing that remembers everything and never forgets, these entities will, in principle, exist forever, or at least for as long as that blockchain is running. So we are creating entities that will be autonomous, that are interacting with us. Think about the Bitcoin protocol. It's software that is paying the miners. So software that has employed humans. It's the opposite. It's not humans that are using software. It's software that is paying humans to do some actions. When this scenario becomes broader and broader, we are creating new entities which are autonomous and at the end of the day are interacting with us. It's that interaction that becomes the point of focus.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And perhaps we can go into why would we need to grant legal personality to these DAO entities? Is the concept of legal personality an alien concept? Perhaps I can throw this question back at the panelists. Leonard, if you wish to comment.
Usually when I have this discussion with lawyers who are not familiar with this industry, they're just in shock when you discuss the concept of granting legal personality to DAO. But if you look at the historical perspective, legal personality is indeed a fiction. Law, on an arbitrary basis, decides to grant legal personality to a form of entity. So we've had, if you look historically, we've had legal personality for foundations, legal personality for partnerships, for limited liability companies. From a local point of view, you have municipalities, all of these having legal personality. So legal personality is actually a tool which law uses as an entity grows, an entity form grows in popularity to solve certain issues. And these issues typically relate to, first of all, capacity, sort of capacity to enter into a contract, but also with the right to have legal personality, you have also some responsibilities. And those responsibilities are typically the possibility of recourse and liability against it. So as the industry matures and there are more DAOs becoming possible contracting parties, you need to grant to those DAOs legal personality to be able to allow this industry to flourish.
Okay, thanks. Irina, would you like to add anything to the discussion on, I mean, Steve mentioned a very interesting point here when looking at granting of legal personality to software. The choice of law in itself becomes quite a headache to understand which choice of law will regulate the DAO, because there's no human element. So what are your thoughts on perhaps would you need to have the software choose its choice of law? Would it need to kind of appoint a regulator which will then regulate the mechanisms of the software? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, blockchain doesn't know borders, right? So it seems like a bit of a nonsense in imposing the jurisdictional borders for software which knows no borders, for a company that knows no borders, for software that knows no borders. What is the solution? Could a solution be creating jurisdiction which is specific for this type of companies, for this type of software, and whether it is an industry-run initiative, you know, in comparing with something that was done in medieval ages in Europe, where there was no mercantile law, so the merchants gathered together and they said, okay, now these are the rules and regulations by which we will all play. Should the industry do that? Should the industry take this initiative bottom up and to say, okay, now to protect us, because the legal
absence of a governance structure, when we look at the granting of a legal personality to these DAO entities, what comes to mind is the appointment of a responsible individual who would have intervention powers to intervene in the software should something go wrong, or should there be any material loss to the users. Maybe Amandine, you can comment on, would this impact the decentralization itself of a DAO, having an interventory party with appointed rights to intervene within the software?
Yeah, I think one of the points that would lead to the creation of a legal personality is what you said, to protect the developers, but also because this software, this code is going to stay after the death of most of them. And it's going to stay, and it will still owe some liabilities to the end consumer to protect them. So I think it gives continuity to the software itself beyond the people. So I think that's one of the main points why legal personality makes sense. I think indeed there will be a conflict between this autonomous and organization and the fact that it may be changed by other developers. So there are still many questions to be answered. And yeah, so I think that's going to be an interesting path to go through.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And just to now focus on the attributes and qualities which a DAO should have in place for legal personality to be able to be granted to these entities. Steve, what are your thoughts on the typical features and attributes which a DAO needs to possess in order for legal personalities to be granted?
Well, it's a bit of a paradox because obviously decentralized autonomous software which exists on a blockchain cannot be regulated, period, I would say, because of its nature. So we have to intervene before the software is created. We have to entice the developers to want to make their software like a good citizen in some jurisdiction. It's not much different than the thinking of Satoshi Nakamoto when he invented the whole notion of mining. He was creating an incentive for certain people to behave in a certain way. And therefore, the idea here is that legal personality will not be granted to any sort of DAO that is out there, but only to certain DAOs that exhibit certain features, attributes, behaviors, which, of course, being software, need to be coded. So a developer or a company or a group of developers would agree to do this. Why would they do that? What is the incentive? It's simply a matter of adoption, because if you look at the situation from the other side of the consumer who are using the services of the DAO and they want to have protection because they are used to have protection in all the economic interactions or services they are using on a daily basis, if they have the choice between two DAOs, one which has legal personality and offers guarantees and one which is totally free and does not offer guarantees, well, presumably they would favor the one that gives these guarantees. So the developer would have an incentive to implement these behaviors in order to get adopted.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on, as I know we're running out of time, so perhaps some concluding comments on whether the granting of legal personality to these DAOs will be positive, obviously for the users and for the consumers in itself, and for the liability ring fencing. Leonard?
If I may, the trick in any solution needs to focus on creating an alternative remedy for the users. So from a drafting point of view, you can grant legal personality, you can limit the liability of the participants, but what is important that any solution needs to keep in mind the end user's protection and that there is recourse to it. A bit of a slight point, legal personality doesn't necessarily mean limited liability, so that is also another step which needs to be taken into consideration in the designation of the solution. But at the same time, since there isn't a share capital in place, since there aren't liability of directors or of mayors or of central controllers, you need to create either some form of insurance, some form of guarantee, some form of sinking fund, which will allow to achieve a similar level of protection for end users that we're used to through central forms of organizations.
Okay, thanks. Irina?
if you get a room full of lawyers, the only logical solution you would have is that we have to regulate, there needs to be rules and procedures in place, etc., etc. So the room, when the decision is being made, should not be full of lawyers. It should be full of the industry people. It should be full of users and the consumers and the developers. Yeah. Because this way you can come up with a solution which is yes, that's right. Having protections in place is fantastic, but also we cannot stifle the innovation. We cannot make it so burdensome and so prohibitive for the people to start their businesses. So there needs to be a balance.
Perhaps we'll mix the room 50-50 then. Something
Agreed.
And we're seeing it. This is actually happening in practice. You've got the developers and the lawyers and the practitioners all working together to understand, concepts which perhaps were still a bit vague for one side or the other. So it's definitely putting a lot of different players together. Amandine, just to conclude, because I know we're running out of time.
Just to conclude, I think the theme was legal personality to DAOs. I think we may invent a new form of legal personality specifically for DAOs, and not try to implement the legal personality that we know in our laws. We need to reinvent also this concept of legal personality, what it means, and how it should be created to fit to this new world.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, thanks. That's it for this panel. Thank you everyone for your insights, and we can wrap up over here. Thanks. Thank you.
Malta's role in the digital world economy. Malta has positioned itself as a focal point for business and trade in the digital era. How does regulation work as a means of attracting foreign direct investment? Dr. Ian Gauci, Kaleido Advocates. Stephen McCarthy, Malta Digital Innovation Authority. Ramona Azzopardi, WH Partners. Deborah Chappelle, Muscat Mitzi Advocates. Anthony David Gutt, Malta Enterprise. Moderated by Joseph Borge, WH Partners.
Hi, good morning everyone. It's really nice to see this hall full. And we all recall the vibe we had in November. And I'm feeling, although maybe it's not as crowded as it was in November, I'm still seeing a lot of interest. I've just come from Consensus in New York, and there it's really picking up again. The vibe on blockchain and cryptocurrencies is really picking up again. So hopefully this year will be as good as 2018 and 2017. So let's start by asking a general question. Almost 1 year on from when the new regulatory and actually from 1 year on from when the new legislative framework in Malta has has been adopted. Have we lived up to the expectation that, and the title we gave to ourselves as the blockchain island?
Shall I start?
Yes.
Okay. So, seeing all these people, this vibe, I would say that is part of the testament. This is the second year running, even for Malta Blockchain Summit. So, we're still there. Having said that, we proved ourselves as well with regards to other countries. When we went out with our legislation, other countries, even the European Commission, saw that it was something quite innovative. There was nothing on cryptocurrencies or quite little literature on that, more so on legislation. So 1 year down the line, Blockchain Island, we created a specific legislation. There were no directives. We were the first, a specific authority dealing with technology. We're seeing countries like Italy, France, looking at our model, adopting our model. Finland, okay? We saw as well ESMA changing their tech, saying, listen, this is something different. We need to legislate. You need to intervene. EBA, European Banking Association, same thing. So I would say that from a strategic point of view, we lived up to our expectation. One last thing, from the operational, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And now the moment is ripe. So we're going to have the first licenses, and even in the background, there's a lot of work which is being done. Work on processes, works on private law provisions, because it's one thing having somebody have a license, blockchain island, but it's another thing sustaining an ecosystem.
Steve, I don't know if you have any comment on this general question from your end.
No, on the general question, I think yes, we have lived up to it. Why? Because being in my position as a regulator, most of the operators would like to know the requirements that they have to do in order to apply. And so I meet basically with operators on a daily basis. And I can tell you that every single day I have an appointment with an operator, which is extremely encouraging. Further than that, we just yesterday increased the list of systems auditors approved, because we went for the road whereby instead of ramping up ourselves with experienced technical people, we accredited systems auditors which are outside there, which have the experience, which have the manpower and the international knowledge. So yes, I would say that we're
Steve, let's come to that later on.
Yes.
And give us more information about that.
Definitely.
Anyone else has any comment about Malta being the blockchain island and whether we have lived up to that expectation?
If I may, Joe, from a tax point of view, I think we definitely lived up to the expectation. Malta was one of the very first countries that issued guidelines on how the LT assets are taxed. I have attended several conferences, international conferences, and when I speak to my colleagues outside of Malta, revenue departments in different countries, they haven't given an opinion or a guideline or law on how the LT assets and cryptocurrencies and transactions in cryptocurrencies are to be taxed. Malta, I think, was one of the very first countries that issued very detailed guidelines, which, as we go along, we'll see also that may be changed to keep up with the technological changes.
Okay. Deborah?
Well, Joe, I think it's been a success story so far. From my side, being a private practitioner and running one of the VFA agents here in Malta, we feel that the interest has continued, and from our side, also being appointed as VFA agents, we feel that is a step in the right direction.
In fact, one comment I would have also is that initially, I believe, Ian, some couple of years ago, probably it was just 4 or 5 of us who were discussing blockchain on social media. And suddenly, I'm seeing everyone getting involved. And to be fair, I'm seeing a lot of competence as well. So initially, maybe everyone was trying to just get seen in the industry, but rather today, if you speak to people, they really know what they're talking about. So the fact that we have so many service providers as well that are knowledgeable is quite positive as well. We have auditors, as Steve was saying. We have we have lawyers, we have accountants that really understand this. And I think, as what happened with the gaming industry, again, sorry for making the comparison, but literally that is what gave us the edge.
To close it off also from
yes, also from a government entity point of view.
I believe what we need to be honest with ourselves. There was a dip and we all felt it on international level. It also affected the kind of operations that we've seen in Malta and the momentum. However, we're here today. We're here in numbers and in quality. I believe that the blockchain island concept is not just marketing or just words uttered by politicians. It's real belief. It's real building an ecosystem. It's real hard work from all of you, and also, I believe, Malta Enterprise included, to create an ecosystem. So I'm proud to say that we have had successful applications for our support measures in the past months. And today, in these days, we'll be able to meet many more companies, but also set up, we have already a number of companies that we have set up meetings for them to get to know other players in the ecosystem, players which might not be directly from blockchain, but coming from, let's look at AI or IoT, meetings with the health authorities, meeting with regulators in transportation, for example. So it's happening. It's happening with its pace, but we're here with content and with value today.
Fantastic. So, Steve, you were mentioning earlier on what the MDIA is doing. Can you give us a check on where we are, how it's shaping up, and what are the next steps now?
Okay. No, basically, we just list the first systems auditors, and in the coming weeks and in the coming months, we will increase the list of systems auditors. It is important. Why? Because we have given some rigorous...
How many system auditors are
Systems auditors, we have approved 3, okay? And the target is that by the end of the year, we will have 10. Keep in mind also that systems auditors also engage with a subject matter expert. So in one particular audit firm, okay, they can have 2, 3, 5 subject matter experts. And why am I saying this? Because we feel that there's going to be an influx of applications. So we are already speaking with the systems auditors in order to prepare themselves. We're telling them, listen, come and increase the subject matter experts, because once there's an influx of applications which have to be audited, in order for them to be ready to cater for these applications, rather than seeing the applications coming in and then coming us with accrediting the subject matter experts. So basically, that is the way forward. What are we doing? Basically, there are 2 ways, either certification or issuing a systems auditor opinion. We're in contact with MFSA on a continuous basis. MFSA has decided that in particular applications, in particular platforms, they will only ask for a systems auditor opinion in particular. But in other cases, for example, in exchanges which deals with millions of dollars or every day, they might decide to come for certification directly for us. So it's twofold. When they come for certification directly from us, what's the difference? Basically, there's an important difference. What is it? First of all, we will ask for a systems auditor opinion just the same. But more than that, we also have within our law, within our guidelines, the appointment of a technical administrator with the use also of a forensic node. What does that mean? That means that if, for example, there's a platform which there is breach of law, you know, and it is technically possible, we can and we have the authority to instruct the technical administrator to switch off the component which is breach of law, where it is technically possible.
Anthony, we always speak about regulation, but in Malta there are other incentives, and most of which are offered by Malta Enterprise. Could you please tell us very briefly how Malta Enterprise can help companies in this space?
So basically, we normally talk about access to finance and money and grants, but we are realizing that there's a need of assistance also on 2 other very important formations towards an ecosystem, which is talent and education. So basically, I would like to just highlight some incentives that we have on these 2 particular topics. When it comes to talent, we have the highly qualified individual scheme, which helps individuals that, for example, if a company is looking at setting up base in Malta, and they have a CFO, a CEO, but they're looking for a COO, for example, and they need to import talent. They need to bring someone to complete that team. As Malta Enterprise, we administer this incentive that that particular individual can benefit from a personal tax of just 15%, which is obviously very conducive. There are other elements. For example, if you want to apply for a working visa, this is not something that we govern, but someone that is earning upwards than 35K can have a working visa if he's successful in 10 days' time. So that's another positive element. When you are training the people that you bring to Malta or talent that you find here, a particular other incentive can give you back to up to 70% of the costs on training. So those are incentives on training, let's say, and talent. We have seen also, and I'm very proud to say that both the University of Malta and MCAST are pushing, but we have also seen global players that are coming to Malta, global players in the blockchain industry, that are wanting to come to Malta, not just to have a software development arm, but also to train people here. So
thanks.
Watch the space.
Thanks, Anthony. Ramona, briefly, because we only have 5 minutes left. Another important factor, and you have already mentioned it in your first intervention, is tax. But not just from a tax efficiency point of view. Everyone knows that Malta is a very attractive jurisdiction from a tax efficiency point of view. But in the digital innovation space, we are also seeing legal certainty being instilled from a tax point of view. So what are the advantages of Malta from a tax point of view, not strictly speaking from a tax efficiency point of view?
Okay, so you mentioned tax efficiency. I'm sure most of you are aware that Malta has a beneficial corporate tax regime. A beneficial corporate tax regime that is also backed by double taxation treaties and also backed by tax transparency, which our country signed through several treaties. So it's not just a corporate tax regime, but it's also backed by multilateral relations with other countries. From a certainty point of view, definitely the guidelines that were published in November last year gave lots of certainty when it comes to transactions on cryptocurrencies and blockchain and related matters. However, what we're seeing at the moment is that in cross-border transactions, some of the times we would need to cross-refer to our colleagues in other countries. For example, a simple example, on exchanges and VAT, most of the time we would need to cross-refer to other countries to see how these are taxed in their other jurisdiction. And there we still lack uncertainty. But to sum it up, I think from a Maltese point of view, companies that want to set up in Malta, they have the legal framework to do so now.
Ian, but let's face it, Malta's great, we're attractive, but we are not a bed of roses. And there are some issues that we need to address. Some of which are that authorities are a bit slow in granting authorizations, maybe due to lack of resources as well, while banks make our lives extremely difficult. What's your take?
Well, I only have half of 3 minutes, so let me park the banking issue because I don't want to stir controversy. I think the issue is clear and there is a problem, and it needs to be tackled. I can assure that even from the legislative point of view, we are looking at options. They are looking at options. Okay? Even the model France use could be amplified to help. There are applications which are being processed, and as we discussed several times in previous instances, myself and yourself, there are as well other entities who can provide services replicated worldwide. But that is a problem. Now, specifically on the authorization, there I beg a little bit to disagree. You specifically said that we started 3, 4, 5. Now we have a community. We are creating an ecosystem. We have an authority which is specifically focused on technology. We're starting something new. This is not atypical to cryptocurrencies. Even the MFSA, okay, is recreating itself. It's writing a new chapter. Why? It's working closely with a technology authority, something which is alien to any financial services authority, okay? And we're already seeing principles which we've installed, even licensing principles, in the VFA, being applied as well in the financial services, where that is pretty much harmonized. So I say, the chapter is there, we're writing it, it takes time. Creating an ecosystem takes time, and not only creating it, but maintaining it, because when you create it, you have value, and you have expectations, and there is where you need to keep those expectations. So even there, the MFSA is doing a fantastic job. Is it the perfect world? No. But I've never seen a bed of roses without thorns as well.
What's your take on this, Deborah?
Just to continue on what Ian has mentioned, I think the regulator is always juggling two sides to this, trying to be efficient, but at the same time processing due diligence in the most, let's say, rigorous manner. And while I see that, yes, the regulator has been more efficient, especially in this new sector, in this VFA sector, which is, yes, now also being adopted in the traditional financial services side, I do think that there is more work that can be done on the due diligence processing. As a private practitioner, we do feel that this is, it needs to happen. We need to make sure that essentially we're only attracting business that makes sense, reputable business, but at the same time, it needs to be a bit quicker. And I think a solution to that might also lie in this new sector, in the blockchain sector, that possibly the government and the regulator should also be considering. And possibly also look at a situation where due diligence is processed centrally, where our clients and people who are coming to Malta to open their business don't have to process it through multiple channels.
Non-duplication of controls would be the right methodology, and the risk-based approach.
And the risk-based approach.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I had a couple of more questions, but we don't have time to tackle them. But I'm pretty sure that we can ask questions to our panelists here during the show. We will all be here at the show for the rest of this week, so hope to see you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Innovating for tech opportunities across the Commonwealth. Collaboration within the tech ecosystem offers a clear path to improved entrepreneurial opportunities. It's time to examine the long road to building stronger ties across the Commonwealth. Lord Marland, Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council.
Well, good morning, everybody. I normally get an applause when I walk into a room, but you all seem to be half asleep. I want to liven you up a bit. Liven you up. Wake up. The other thing that happens when I come into a room, a lot of people leave it, so just stay where you are, and the money I gave you earlier to hang on will be good. I woke up this morning, and my big struggle was not what speech am I going to make, but whether I should wear a tie, or whether I should wear a suit at all. And then I look around the room, and I see everyone's wearing suits, and some are wearing ties, which I can't believe in a blockchain, modern, vibrant conference like this, that you're all wearing suits. Not all of you, but some are wearing suits. I long to be like Steve Jobs. Most ex-politicians do as well. They like stand on stage in jeans and a T-shirt and make a speech. And so I sort of kind of hoped I might be able to do it today, but I was advised against it. Anyway, what a pleasure it is to be back in Malta again. Malta, 2.5 years ago, was chair in office of the Commonwealth. So I spent quite a lot of time coming here and making speeches. We had the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference here in the Commonwealth Business Forum, which I chaired, which had 1,000 delegates from across 80 countries in the Commonwealth here gathered in Malta. And it's not only a pleasure to be in Malta because it's such a great country, but to be in Malta, a country that is ahead of the curve in terms of establishing regulation, establishing a structure for these modern technologies, blockchain, cryptocurrency, etc. And I applaud the Maltese government for the example they're leading and the steps they're creating and the infrastructure they're making. And the other thing that's a pleasure for me as someone who is fundamentally anti-establishment is that I'm amongst people who believe in globalization, who believe in connectivity, and who believe, to a certain extent, in disruption. The world is ready for disruption in much more shape and form than it currently is. It is being disrupted. It's being disrupted in lots of bad ways, but it is in the shape that it is in a place now where disruption is going to be the key word of the future. As we'll see through European elections, which are happening now, as we'll see through a series of elections that are happening across the world, disruption and the rebellion against the status quo and the ponderousness of most governments and the straitjackets of most governments is what this is about. So I am so pleased to be here in a room of disruptors, of people who are pushing the new barriers, who believe in connectivity. And of course, the governments themselves are currently embarking on a program of containment, of how to contain this great globalization and this connectivity that's coming through the new forms of media. And one of the reasons they are doing this is because they can't really understand how this has all happened. It's caught them asleep at their watch. They've been unable to control hacking, for example. They've been unable to control cyber hacking and cyber security. They've been unable to provide it. They've been unable to come to terms with the fact that if, for example, you're Germany, the gross domestic product of Germany is the same size as the market cap of the combination of Google and Microsoft. And that is an extraordinary thing, that these two companies combined will be the same size of the German GDP. They're also unable to control it because if any of you who are Chelsea supporters or general football supporters would be amazed at this statistic that there is a player called N'Golo Kante who plays in the centre of the midfield for Chelsea. There are a number of other players like Sanchez, etc., who play for Man United, who pay more tax in the United Kingdom than Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And this is an extraordinary problem that governments are having to try and contain with. So the framework of initiatives within this space are going to be very important for the future. And it's particularly, and an organisation like ours is going to be incredibly important for the future, because we are not a government. We're an assembly of 53 countries who have committed loosely to a progress and a platform and a connectivity that brings together the countries so that they can share and participate in connectivity. Our organisation is in a very sweet spot, which brings together business to business and business to politics. And these are quite rare institutions, and so has great prosperity in this new emerging world. And because of our contacts, and because of the nature of your business, and the importance of it now for a new economy, our organisation is going to play a much greater role in supporting your endeavours. The Commonwealth, for those who are not familiar with it, is 53 countries, a third of the world's population, one of which has just been had its election, which is India. 900 million people voted in the Indian election. Another of the countries is Nigeria. Nigeria, by 2030, will have a bigger population than the United States of America. These are two vastly increasing nations where management of their people and converting their economies into an economy that can cope with them through modern techniques is going to be absolutely vital. The great advantage of the Commonwealth, and it is proven it is 19% more competitive doing intra-Commonwealth business than not, is that we all speak English. It is one of the rules of the Commonwealth. We all have the same rule of law, which originally is British rule of law. We all have similar education systems, and we have similar structures and shared values, a lot through religion and through missionary services, but there are shared values throughout these 53 countries. Not least, of course, our understanding of the games of sport, most of which are played intra-Commonwealth. So it is a great diaspora for you to plug into. Why is it a great opportunity? Well, the opportunity lies not only in its population growth and the fact that it is a democratically elected, there are democratically elected countries, which is another key underpinning point of being a member of the Commonwealth. It is because they have diverse currencies. Many of them do not have correspondent banking, so are in desperate need to be able to trade a currency which is often very weak and often is subject to the vicissitudes of the financial markets. And so being able to have currency platforms where they can trade on a global basis is going to be a very important factor for them. They also have primitive health systems, a lot of them. Getting information out to the 900 or 1,000,000,003 people of India in terms of modern health techniques, modern nursing, and even giving birth, how to give birth if you're out in the middle of Africa and you have a problem giving birth. Being able to tap into obviously social media to find out how to do it, but also to tap into a revolutionized health system which blockchain will provide is going to be a remarkably important thing for these countries. It is going to be fundamental to their growth. And throughout all this, there is underinvestment by government and their governments. Often corruption is involved. Often the investment comes by way of China, which comes in and leaves quickly because it doesn't give the skill transfers that are necessary to regenerate an economy or enhance an economy. So these are the sort of things that when you wish to go into these countries, you should consider taking with you as part of your initiative. I was much interested in a talk earlier which was about crowdfunding. Well, if you can take that crowdfunding point to some of the emerging markets across the world, you will bypass the staid and often cautious approach that is applied by many of the investment houses across the world. And the opportunities are absolutely fantastic. If you consider that Nigeria does not have, for example, a tech hub, has a certain amount of experts in technology but doesn't have a tech hub, it doesn't have a blockchain system like Dubai is going to have by 2020, where the whole of government is run on a blockchain system, the opportunities are absolutely phenomenal. There are, of course, in all these things, problems. There are problems with payments, there are problems with the application of the rule of law, even though you will understand it. There are problems with who you establish as a partner. But through a trusted organization like the Commonwealth, we can help you understand in a better way what the best techniques and the best people who to trade with. But as you can imagine, with 1/3 of the world's population, the opportunities are manifest and manifold. So with that, I leave you hopefully with some thoughts about the opportunities. It is all very well being someone who is supported by, who understands globalization, who understands connectivity and the network of it. But unless you offer it, unless you go to these countries and help them and support them with it, that connectivity will fail. So my plea to you all in this room is get out there, go and visit, and any help we can be, we will be there at your side. But the ultimate plea is in the words of a well-known advert in the United Kingdom where he says, "I gamble responsibly." The most important thing is that anything you do, if you are going to get the approval of governments, is that it has to be done responsibly. And that's why, coming full circle, I think the government of Malta, in establishing this framework, and being the first of 1 or 2 countries that have established framework, that leading the example throughout the world, not least the Commonwealth, of how businesses like yours can foster in an ecosystem is a great opportunity, and we owe them a huge amount of thanks. So thank you all very much for sparing the time.
Done, sir.
towards a common sandbox environment. An esteemed panel of Commonwealth representatives discussed the wide-ranging implications of a regulatory sandbox environment within the bloc. Lord Marland, Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. Carmelo Abela, Government of Malta. Amanda Sharkey, Sheffield Robotics. Moderated by Eric van der Klee, C4DR.
Hello. Hi everyone, thank you very much for this. I finally get to ask some questions, so thank you for our panel for joining us today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this morning, and now we're going to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to ask our panelists to firstly introduce themselves and then tell us a little bit about the work that they're doing on this topic. Lord Marland, because we've already heard from you, I hope you don't mind we defer to Amanda.
No, I'm delighted you avoid me, I'll tell you.
But thank you for your wonderful talk. Amanda, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your work in the field of AI?
Yes, certainly. So I come from an academic background, and what I've been writing on is particularly looking at the ethics of robotics, so where robots should and should not be used. But that applies also to thinking about AI and the sort of ethical approaches. Again, the sort of identifying what the concerns are, what the risks might be, but also what one needs to do is not miss out on the benefits. And I think that apply that to a certain extent to thinking about blockchain also.
Because there are equal opportunities as challenges. Now we're going to come back and ask you a little bit more about that. Mr. Abela, thank you so much for joining us. It's terrific to see the Maltese government so well represented at this conference. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your remit?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Some might wonder what a foreign and trade promotion minister is doing here. Well, actually, as part of my job is to promote Malta and what we stand for. Having trade promotion, I think it's a good thing for our local business community to also think about AI, blockchain, and how to promote themselves also to be present internationally. So that's part of my job. And of course, while we are meeting in different formations, be it the UN, be it the Commonwealth, be it the Council of Europe, be it the European Union, definitely these subjects will be on the agenda. So we as foreign ministers, at least, we have to try to tackle these areas as well.
And Lord Marland, I mean, I remember seeing a video of you. You spoke actually in Malta when Malta became the chair of the Commonwealth and spoke about opportunity Commonwealth. But in related to technology, what is the opportunity there? How big is it, and how do we tap into it?
Well, as I said earlier, it's absolutely enormous because it's a third of the world's population, 53 countries. Many of them are not technology-wise up to speed with the A-rated countries. So there's a huge opportunity for people to not only educate them but invest in them, and because it is the future.
I mean, in the UK, we've been fortunate with the regulatory sandbox. But even so, even a regulated company from the UK or anywhere else has to be passported or be regulated in all Commonwealth countries. Yeah. But I heard recently that they're accepting 80% of the work that you do when passporting regulated businesses. That's a tremendous opportunity, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm a bit wary. I'm obviously not a technical expert about these sandboxes. I think they're more confining than perhaps they are an enabling, and they're quite a straitjacket, but you're more of an expert on these things than I am. But in terms of, because the Commonwealth largely has the British rule of law, there are a couple of exception countries to that, but largely has the British rule of law, which has been adapted very suitably in other countries. It's very easy to passport things through a legal system and a legal framework, isn't it?
Well, it is, but the challenges of doing so are huge. By the way, just a quick word on the FCA regulation, Sandbox. It's been terrific for people with new business models because it means that you won't go to prison. So it's kind of worth doing business with the regulator, tell them how you want it and figure it out together. That said, I have been so impressed with what Malta's done with their recent blockchain regulations, the VFAA stuff. Now, I've read every word, and I've actually interviewed some of the auditors to see if they really can tell the difference between the code and the white papers. So that's pioneering work. But now I understand Malta's going to be thinking about something similar regarding AI. What's the ambition there?
Well, the ambition is to, while we regulate, we have to pay attention not to, let's say, regulate creativity. And those who can create will be free to create, but within certain rules and regulations. For now, we have already EU, let's say, framework that was already published last year, and we have to work, I think, as a starting point from those regulations. But we have, while we are talking internationally, even, I mean, last week I was in Helsinki for a ministerial meeting of the Council of Europe ministers, and regulation in respect of AI was also mentioned as a priority for the incoming French presidency of the Council of Europe. So, yes to regulation, but we have to pay attention what to regulate exactly without preventing creativity to flourish.
And also used as a tool to promote trade and diplomacy, even?
Yes, I think it's, we are discussing the issue of AI as a diplomatic tool, for example. It's already a topic in itself.
That's so exciting. Tell me more.
Well, I think it's more exciting than trying to solve Libya and the Middle East and maybe some other challenges.
They're also important, don't get me wrong.
They are very important.
Yeah.
They are critical and crucial, of course. Don't take me wrong on that. But definitely it's something that we have been debating for many years. So now to start debating on our agenda topics such as AI, blockchain, which can be also tools for developing countries and for businesses to flourish and use this tool, but also for the ministry itself, for my ministry, for example, to make use of this tool when it comes to issues that we have within the ministry and how we can use blockchain and the AI in this respect. And of course, diplomacy, while we still have to think that the human element within the diplomatic corps is, and I think in the foreseeable future will still be an important element, but we have this tool that can, give us a helping hand in diplomacy as well.
I mean, it's pioneering stuff, and
Yes.
I'm always keen to see what Malta is doing, because actually some of what you're doing, we would love the rest of the EU to adopt as well, certainly in the blockchain regulation. Amanda, coming to you, I've been enjoying watching some of the videos and reading about some of the work you've been doing. You've spoken about things like the ethics of robots in care. Now, I do not remember any of my children at school ever getting near a topic like that. But it's important for us to start thinking about as society. Tell us a bit about that, if that's okay.
Well, I do agree that in terms of schools, so increasingly as AI is having an impact on our lives, and we're affected by decisions made by algorithmic decisions and so on, I think there is a need for schools to educate. And particularly in terms of robots, where you can easily, because you can create a human